Hi again, everybody. I wanted to talk a little bit about your personal narrative essays, which are now due next week, April 8th. Just a few pointers, just want to go over a couple things and give you some examples to help you out. So, first of all, just about the basic details of the project. You're writing a paper for April 8th. I extended the deadline by a week because of this, we lost a week. The paper should be 4 to 6 pages in length. I'm looking for standard formatting. And please make sure these are clear and written in correct grammar. You can contact me at any point if you have any questions. Very early in the week, you can get me a rough draft to look at. If it's early, that is. Otherwise I will have a hard time getting to them. Nico is still involved in our class. I suggest that you try and get them a draft or ask them some questions. Maybe Nico will do some Q&A with you, through FaceTime, as will I. I can have virtual office hours with you for a couple minutes if you want to arrange that. A few points about your personal narrative essay. These are, what is a personal narrative essay? We discussed this a little bit in class, but that's been a few weeks ago, so I wanted to refresh your memory. It is where you will be conveying an argument, and there is a thesis, but you do this by way of a narrative structure. An essay with a narrative structure. About your thesis, I am less picky about this thesis being visible way up front. Your thesis can appear anywhere in the paper that you feel makes sense. A personal narrative essay, a story. It is a story you share to choose with readers that communicates your understanding of yourself, others, society, and I've asked you all to think about how it relates to your understanding of the wild, or if an experience with the wild, something wild, somewhere wild, how that impacts how you understand yourself. So you could think about the understanding going either way. How did this experience change or shape how you view the wild, or how did your encounter with the wild shape how you view yourself or your place in the world? If you are looking for something to do this weekend, this might be a good opportunity to go for a hike. That's what I've been doing because you can't go anywhere social anymore. We've been going on a lot of hikes with my family, and this might be a good opportunity for you to do that and to see what kind of revelation you have. But it might be easier for you to think about a past experience that involved some kind of activity, maybe a vacation or a holiday or some work you did, because you want to have a kind of a plot and a narrative structure. A personal narrative structure essay uses the components of story: introduction, plot, characters, setting, and conflict. I've indicated those on the directions. I don't think that you need to care to worry about covering each one of those, but it should definitely cover most or include most. And the personal narrative essay, as mentioned, also uses the components of argument, thesis, and conclusion. We tell our readers a story in these essays to make a larger argument. Focus the reader's attention on significant detailed scenes so that you can develop your argument persuasively through effective storytelling. It is useful to define the conflict at the heart of your story in order to make this, to make a point. You can describe how, there was a transition from a previous outlook to a new one, and how a personal revelation came about. Consider the following questions about conflict as they relate to your narrative. Is your conflict internal, taking place inside you as you struggle to make sense of competing ideas about yourself, others, and society? 2, who or what challenged preconceived notions you had? Is your conflict external, pitting you against circumstances or others involved in experience with you? Is your conflict in response to a stereotype or mentality society holds about some part of your identity? Summing these up, thinking more broadly in terms of the questions for your thesis. What lesson did you learn from the resolution of your conflict? How has your perspective changed? What did this experience communicate to you about yourself, family, and society? Think in terms of setting, of course, and background. What is the event you want to share? Where did it take place? When? What are the important details of time and place you need to share? Plot. What important events led to the event? What action happened immediately before it and after it? And what changed as a result? If you include characters, who was involved in the event? What is the relationship between you and these other individuals? Why are these individuals significant to your narrative? And climax, isolate the central meaning. At what point in your story did your understanding of your conflict change? What meaning is revealed in the moment of truth? And as for a conclusion or a resolution, how was the conflict resolved? How can you illustrate relief from or resolution of the tension caused by this conflict? And why might the reader believe this conflict will or will not pose a problem in the future? I indicated some tips on the backside of your handout, which I've also posted on Canvas, of course. Some tips for making a compelling personal narrative essay, vivid description. Focus on the important moments and incidents, and don't worry about the lesser ones. Emotion. Try and convey the salient emotions: fear, anger, anxiety, thrill. And dialogue is useful or helpful at times, but not necessarily. There is, I think, with dialogue, there is you should be careful to have just the right amount, not too much, not too little. It can certainly show up in parts. The last thing I wanted to share with you all is, I think some examples are probably useful. And I'm going to share with you two from the readings we've done. So from Corgesson Boyle's art story, Whales Weep, this is on page 107. He tells us at the bottom, this is when he is whale watching. This is the self-centered photojournalist who is cruising the bay, looking at whales with the woman Grace that he's going to have an affair with very shortly. We cruised the bay, he says, and I was introduced to 30 whales or so. Some recognized by name, others anonymous. I saw Gray Spot, Cyclops, Farafoss, and Domino, and actually got close enough to touch one of them. He was skimming the surface, black as a barge, and crusted over with barnacles and lice. The huge yellowed mesh of his baleen exposed like the insides of a piano. Grace wheeled the raft round on him, throttle cranked down to idle, and as we came up alongside him, I reached out and patted his cool, smooth hide. It was like patting a very wet horse the size of a house. I laid my open palm against the immensity of the whale's flank, and for one mad moment thought I could feel the blood coursing through him. The colossal heart beating time with the roll of the tides and the crash of distant oceans. I felt I was reaching out and touching the great seeming heart of the planet, and then, in a rush of foam, he was gone. These short stories can be helpful, even if you're not crazy about Boyle. These can be helpful to give you an example of components for these essays, because these are narrative encounters with the wild, obviously. But Wilson also has a couple useful passages in here. I'm going to call your attention to this is the very bottom, page 87. He talks about when he is in he's in the Great Smoky Mountains, and he flips over a piece of bark from a fallen log, and he sees tiny little creatures there. And this leads him to a broader consideration. He says, consider in the same light the different kinds of flies alone you would capture in a field on a summer day by simply sweeping a butterfly net back and forth through the vegetation. Then ponder further, if you will, that the species are variously specialized to feed on particular kinds of fruit or pollen, or fungi or scat, or dead bodies, or if you let them, your own fresh blood. Great. Some flies are parasites on other insects, and not just any insects, but one to several species on which they are specialized out of thousands available. When, and here's the narrative part, as a teenager, I had this epiphany, and I almost became a dipterist, an entomologist who studies flies. I was mesmerized by delicate little flies of the family Dolichopodidae. Dolichopodidae, glistening all over in metallic blues and greens as they displayed themselves on plant leaves in the summer sunshine. How many species were there? Why were they dancing with the maximum effect to be seen, at least by me? Where and how did they spend their lives as larvae? Then I was distracted by ants. Although I was in northern Alabama at the time, far from the tropics, I discovered a colony of army ants crossing our backyard. They were a native species, a miniature version of the army ants that rampaged through the forests of Central and South America. I followed their swift, moving column as they crossed a neighbor's yard, and then poured across a paved street and into a patch of woodland. At the tail end of the procession, I saw parasitic silverfish and other insect followers. My beautiful little Dolichopodid flies could offer no competition to this spectacle, and I resolved to specialize in the study of ants. I had no idea then of the breadth and endless beauty of the world I was entering. He goes on, each ecosystem, be it a pond, meadow, coral reef, or something else out of thousands that can be found around the world, is a web of specialized organisms braided and woven together. And so it goes. So that is another, again, that's on page 87, 88, and that is another useful example of using narrative structure to tell a point, to convey a point, I guess. So that's all I have to tell you about this right now. If you have any questions, again, reach out to me, please, okay? And good luck with these essays, and I will see you later. Bye.